Hi, in this video we are going to see Sale of Goods Act 1930, one of the most important acts in your paper. So introduction. First point, transactions in the nature of sale of goods form the subject matter of this act. That is, when you are selling the goods, what are all the transactions that you have to take care, or what are all the points that you have to consider. That is what we are going to read in this chapter. The Act came into force on 1st July 1930. It extends to whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. This chapter deals with specific types of contract. Okay. Now, definition of a contract of sale. Section 4 defines a contract of sale as a contract whereby a seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to the buyer for a price. Please write the definition as it is. You cannot write it in your own words. Essentials of a valid contract, or essentials of a contract of sale. So what is very important? First thing is there must be at least two parties, that is the buyer and the seller. Okay, there must be at least two parties. A sale has to be a bilateral because the property in the goods has to pass from one person to another person. The seller and the buyer must be different persons. Okay, what is the meaning of bilateral? If there is an agreement between two persons, it is called as bilateral. Bi means two. Now, second point, transfer or agreement to transfer the ownership of goods. So there must be an agreement to transfer the ownership of goods. This is very important. Okay, in a contract of sale, it is the ownership that is being transferred or agreed to be transferred. 3. The subject matter of the contract must necessarily be goods. Only goods can be transacted, or only the goods can be transferred from one person to another person. And the sale of immovable property is not covered under Sale of Goods Act. Why? It is not a good. Okay, only goods are covered under this act, and immovable property is not covered under this act, because immovable property is not a good. Fourth point, price is the consideration of the contract of sale. You must get price for the transfer of ownership. That is, price is very important. That is the amount. When you sell one product to another person, then you must get price. So that is, price is the amount, sale consideration. That is, price is the consideration of the contract of sale. Money is necessary, and that is important. If, for instance, that is an example, goods are offered as the consideration for goods, it will not amount to sale. Okay, that is, if you take a barter system where goods are given exchange for goods, here no money is involved. This is not a sale. Okay, this is not at all a sale. Only when you give the goods and you get money in return, that will be called as a sale. Okay, so that is the example which I wanted to give you. So that's what I have given it in the presentation. If, for instance, goods are offered as consideration for goods, it will not amount to sale. It will be called as a barter, where goods are sold for a definite sum and the price is paid partly in terms of valued up goods and partly in cash. That is a sale. Why? Because it is partly in cash. Cash is involved here. When money is involved, then it will become a sale. These are known as part exchange contracts. To sum up, the act applies only when the buyer pays by cash. Very simple. Or cash or by check or credit card, etc. Money should be involved. Payment by installments. You can also make payment by installments. If the buyer and seller come to a conclusion, the payment can also be made by installments. Point number 5. All other essentials of a valid contract as per the Indian Contract Act 1872 must be present. So there are some essentials of a valid contract which is given in the Indian Contract Act 1872, and that must be fulfilled or satisfied. Next is sale and agreement to sell. Sale. We are going to see what a sale is. Where under a contract of sale, the property, that is the ownership in the goods, is transferred from seller to the buyer, it is called as the sale. That is, where the ownership is transferred from the seller to buyer, it is called as a sale. Thus, sale takes place when there is a transfer of ownership in goods. A sale is an executed contract. Now, what is agreement to sell? Agreement to sell means a contract of sale under which the transfer of property in goods is to take place at a future date or subject to some conditions thereafter to be fulfilled. That is, there are some conditions which has to be fulfilled in the future. So, difference between sale and agreement to sell. Sale is an executed contract. Agreement to sell, it is an executory contract. That is, it has to be executed. Only when the conditions are fulfilled, it will be executed. So, till then it is called as an executory contract. Now, sale. Since the ownership has passed to buyer, the seller can sue the buyer for the price of the goods if the latter makes a default in payment. Okay. Agreement to sell. In case of breach, the seller can only sue for damages unless the price was payable at a stated date. Sale. In case of loss of goods, the loss will fall on the buyer even though the goods are in the possession of the seller. It is because the risk is associated with ownership. Under agreement to sell, the loss in this case shall be borne by the seller even though the goods are in possession of the buyer. Sale. Under sale, in case the buyer pays the price and the seller thereafter becomes insolvent, the buyer can claim the goods from the official receiver or assignee as the case may be. In case of agreement to sell, the buyer cannot claim the goods but only a rateable dividend for the money paid. Okay. Only a part of the money which is called as a dividend will be paid. Next, distinction between sale and some other transaction. First, sale and hire purchase. Okay, sale of goods and work and labor, sale and contract for labor and material, sale and barter, sale and bailment, sale and lease, sale and gift, sale and mortgage, pledge, hypothecation of goods. So, sale is different. Okay, and hire purchase is different, barter is different, bailment is different, lease is different, gift is different, everything is different. We cannot associate them with sale. Now, goods under classification. What do you mean by goods? Goods means every kind of movable property other than actionable claim and money, and includes stocks and shares, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of the land, which are agreed to be severed before sale or under the contract of sale. Second, trademarks, patents, copyrights, goodwill, water, gas, electricity are all goods. In general, it is only the movable that form goods. That is, whichever is movable, okay, which can be moved from one place to another place, it is called as a good. So, immovable property will not be called as a good because it cannot be moved. The term goods excludes money. The term goods excludes money. Money means legal tender and not the rare coins which can be sold and purchased as goods. Okay. Money itself cannot be subject of a sale. Okay. Money cannot be the subject for a sale. The actionable claims are things which a person cannot make use of but which can be claimed by him by means of a legal action. Actionable claim example. So, we will see what actionable claim is. A borrows rupees 5,000 from B at 12% per annum interest on 1st April 2006 and promises to pay back the amount with interest on 1st July 2006. Till 1st July 2006, the debt is an accruing debt and is an actionable claim. Okay. Very simple example. What is an actionable claim? A borrows rupees 5,000 from B at 12% interest on 1st April 2006 and promises to pay back the amount with interest on 1st July 2006. So, till 1st July 2006 it is called as an actionable claim because it is an accruing debt. Now, documents of title to goods. What is meant by documents of title to goods? Any written instrument such as bill of lading, a warehouse receipt, or an order for delivery of goods that in the usual course of business or financing is considered sufficient proof that a person who possesses it is entitled to receive, hold and dispose of the instrument and the goods that it covers. So, this is the definition for a document. title of goods. Okay. A document of title is usually either issued or addressed by the bailey. Who is an bailey? An individual who has custody of the goods of another. To a bailor. Who is a bailor? The person who has entrusted the goods to him or her. Okay. Its terms must describe the goods covered by it so that they are identifiable as well as set forth the conditions of the contractual agreement. Possession of a document of title is a symbolic of ownership of the goods that are described within. So if anyone have the documents of title to goods, then it means he is the owner of such good. Documents of title are an integral part of business since they facilitate commercial transactions by serving as a security for loans sought. So these documents can also be given to the bank it can be used as a security, and they can also get the loan from the banks. A person who possesses a document of title can legally transfer the ownership of goods covered by it. So if I have the document of title to goods, I can transfer this good to any other person. So there is transferability is possible only if you have documents of title to goods. Now, classification of goods. Goods may be classified as existing goods, future goods, and contingent goods. What are existing goods? That is, existing goods are those which are owned or possessed by the seller at the time of the contract. Instances of goods possessed but not owned by the seller are sales by agents and pledgees. Existing goods may be either specific or ascertained, be generic and unascertained. Okay, so we are going to talk about the existing goods. So specific goods means goods identified and agreed upon at the time of a contract of sale is made. Ascertained goods, though normally used as synonym for specific goods, may be intended to include goods which have become ascertained subsequently to the formation of the contract. On execution of a contract, you will get some good that is called as ascertained goods. Generic or unascertained goods are goods indicated by description and not specifically identified. Now, example, Anthony, who owns a TV showroom, has 20 TV sets and agrees to sell any one of them to Bharati. The contract is for unascertained goods, since which particular TV set shall become the subject matter of the sale is not individualized at the time of the contract of sale. So it is a TV showroom. We are going and buying a TV, and the TV owner also agrees to sell one of the TV. Now here is we don't know which TV will come to us, that is which TV will be sold by the owner to us. So this is called unascertained goods. This is the contract for unascertained goods, because there can be more than 100 TV sets when you go to a showroom. Okay, from the 100 TV sets only they will sell one of the TV set to us. So we do not know which set is going to come to us. So this is called as a contract for unascertained goods. Now, future goods. Future goods means goods to be manufactured or produced or acquired by the seller after making the contract of sale. Okay, so a simple example, in a manufacturing company you get an order to produce 50 units. So after the order is received, then you will manufacture those 50 units and you will sell those goods. So example here, Kulkarni agrees to sell future crop of a particular agricultural field in the next season. This is an agreement to sell future goods, because he has to sell the crops. He has to grow them first and then only he has to sell them. So this is an agreement to sell future goods. Contingent goods. What are contingent goods? Contingent goods are the goods the acquisition of which by the seller depends upon a contingency which may or may not happen. Contingent goods is a part of future goods. Example, Alka agrees to sell to Vivek a certain painting only if Chetan, its present owner, sells it to her. So Chetan is the present owner of a painting, and only if Chetan sells to Alka, Alka will be able to sell it to Vivek. So this is a condition which has been imposed. That is why it is called as a contingent good. Wherever you have a condition, it is called as contingent. So this painting is classified as contingent good. Only if Chetan sells the goods to Alka, Alka will be able to sell the painting to the Vivek. Okay. Now, effect of perishing of goods. So section 7 and 8 deals with the effect of perishing of goods on the rights and obligation of the parties to contract of sale. So we know what a perishing goods, right, is, right? That is vegetables, fruits, okay, which has to be sold immediately, otherwise they will perish. Okay, that is what is called as perishing of goods. So under this section, the word perishing means not only physical destruction of goods, but it also covers 1. Damage to goods, so that the goods have ceased to exist in the commercial sense, that is their mercantile character as such has been lost. Example, where cement is spoiled by water and becomes almost stone, or where sugar becomes sharbat, and thus they are unsaleable as cement or sugar. Okay, so where the sugar becomes a sarbat, you cannot sell the sugar, and even if cement is spoiled by water, it becomes a stone, therefore cement becomes unsaleable. Point number 2, loss of goods by theft. Okay, even if it has been sold, it will be called as perishing of goods. Next is where the goods have been lawfully requisitioned by the government, that is government has taken the goods legally, then also it is called as perishing of goods. It may also be mentioned that it is only the perishing of specific and unascertained goods that affects a contract of sale. Where unascertained goods form the subject matter of a contract of sale, their perishing does not affect the contract, and the seller is bound to supply the goods from wherever he likes, otherwise be liable for breach of contract. We have an example here where A agrees to sell to B 10 bales of Egyptian cotton out of 100 bales lying in his godown, and the bales in the godown are completely destroyed by fire. The contract does not become void. A must supply 10 bales of cotton after purchasing them from the market, or pay damages for the breach. Okay, effect of perishing goods so we are going to see section 7 first. 1. First point, perishing of specific goods at or before making of the contract. In case of perishing of the whole of the goods, so the entire goods has been perished or destroyed. Where the specific goods form the subject matter of a contract of sale, and they, without the knowledge of the seller, perish at or before the time of contract, the agreement is void. Okay, so this is without the knowledge of the seller. Some goods can destroy by its own before making the contract of sale. In that case, the agreement will become void. So there is an example illustration here. A sold to B a specific cargo of goods supposed to be on its way from England to Bombay. It turned out that before the day of the bargain, the ship conveying the cargo had been cast away and the goods were lost. Neither party was aware of the fact. The agreement was held to be void. Okay. Now, second illustration, A agrees to sell to B a certain horse. It turns out that the horse was dead at the time of bargain. Though neither party was aware of the fact, the agreement is void. 2. In case of perishing of only a part of the good, that is, entire good is not destroyed, but only a part of the goods are destroyed. Where in a contract for the sale of specific goods, only a part of the goods are destroyed or damaged, the effect of perishing will depend upon whether the contract is entire or divisible. If it is an entire, that is indivisible, and part only of the goods has perished, the contract is void. If the contract is divisible, it will not be void, and the part available in good condition must be accepted by the buyer. Okay. Example, there was a contract for sale of a parcel containing 700 bags of Chinese groundnuts of different qualities. Unknown to the seller, 109 bags had been stolen at the time of the contract. The seller delivered the remaining 591 bags and, on the buyer's refusal to take them, brought an action for the price. It was held that the contract, being indivisible and become void by reason of loss of goods, and the buyer was not bound to take delivery of 591 bags or pay for the goods. Okay. So note, had there been all bags of the same weight and quality of certain price per bag, the contract would have been divisible and the buyer could only have avoided the contract as to those goods which had actually perished. Okay, here in the given example we have different qualities of groundnuts, and that is why the buyer can refuse to buy the goods. Three, perishing of specific goods before sale but after agreement to sell. Section 8. Where there is an agreement to sell specific goods and subsequently the goods, without any fault on the part of the seller or buyer, perish before the risk passes to the buyer, the agreement is avoided. That is, contract of sale becomes void and both the parties are excused from performance of the contract. This provision is based on the ground of supervening impossibility of performance, which makes a contract void. If the contract itself is impossible to perform, then it automatically becomes void. If only part the goods agreed to be sold perish, contract becomes void if it is indivisible, but if it is divisible, then the parties are absolved from their obligations only to the extent of the perishing of the goods. That is, the contract remains valid as regards the part available in the good condition. It must further be noted that if fault of either party causes the destruction of the goods, then the party in default is liable for non-delivery or the pay for the goods, as the case may be. Again, if the risk has passed to the buyer, he may pay for the goods though undelivered. Okay. Examples now. First, A. A buyer took a horse on a trial for 8 days on condition that if found suitable for his purpose, the bargain would become absolute. The horse died on the 3rd day without any fault of either party. Held contract, which was in the form of an agreement to sell, becomes void and the seller should bear the loss. So the case law is Elphick versus Barnes. Okay, this is the case law. Now B. A had contracted to erect machinery on M's premises. The price to be paid on completion. During the course of work, there was a fire which completely destroyed premises and the machinery. It was held that both the parties were excused from further performance and A was not entitled to any payment as the price was payable on the completion of the entire work. Okay. So this case law is Appleby versus Mayers. Okay. All are important case laws and examples. Now, effect of perishing goods. Under this, we have effect of perishing of future goods. As observed earlier, a present sale of future goods always operates as an agreement to sell. As such, there arises a question as to whether Section 8 applies to a contract of sale of future goods. The answer is found in the leading case of Howell versus Coupland. Okay, this is also an important case law. Howell versus Coupland, where it has been held that future goods, the destruction of which makes the contract void. The facts of the case are as follows. Example. C agreed to sell H 200 tons of potatoes to be grown on C's land. C sowed sufficient land to grow the required quantity of potatoes. but without any fault on his part, a disease attacked the crop and he would deliver only about 10 tons. The contract was held to be void. The contract is void. So what is the case law for this? It is Howell versus Coupland. C stands for Coupland and H stands for Howell. Okay, now conditions and warranties, section 11 to 17. In a contract of sale, parties make certain stipulations, that is, agree to certain terms regarding the quality of the goods, the price and the mode of its payment, the delivery of goods and its time and place. All stipulations cannot be treated on the same footing. Some may be intended by the parties to be of a fundamental nature. Example, quality of the goods to be supplied, the breach of which therefore will be regarded as the breach of contract. Some may be intended by the parties to be binding, but of a subsidiary or inferior character. Example, time of payment, so that a breach of these terms will not put an end to the contract, but will make the party committing the breach liable to damages. The former stipulations are called conditions and the latter called as the warranties. Now, stipulations as to time. Stipulations as to time in a contract of sale falls under the following two heads. Stipulation relating to time of delivery of goods. 2. Stipulation relating to time of payment of the price. As regards the time fixed for the delivery of goods, time is usually held to be the essence of the contract. Thus, if time is fixed for delivery of goods and the seller makes a delay, the contract is voidable at the option of the buyer. In case of late delivery, therefore, the buyer may refuse to accept the delivery and may put an end to the contract. So, it is voidable at the option of the buyer. The buyer can either accept it or can reject it. That is called as voidable. As regards the time fixed for the payment of the price, the general rule is that time is not deemed to be the essence of the contract unless a different intention appears from the terms of contract. This is section 11. Thus, even if the price is not paid as agreed, the seller cannot avoid the contract on that account. He has to deliver the goods if the buyer tenders the price within reasonable time before resale of the goods. The seller may claim compensation for the loss to him associated to him by the buyer's failure to pay on the appointed day. Conditions and warranties. This is section 12. So, 12 subsection 2 defines a condition as a stipulation essential to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives rise to a right to treat the contract as repudiated. What is the meaning of repudiated? It is denied. Okay. Section 12 subsection 3 defines a warranty as stipulation collateral to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives rise to claim for damages but not to the right to reject the goods and treat the contract as repudiated. Repudiated means denied. The effect of breach of a condition is to give the aggrieved party a right to treat the contract repudiated. That is, if price has been paid, the buyer can claim the refund of price plus damages for breach. In case of breach of warranty, only damages can be claimed. That is, the buyer must accept the goods and claim damages for the breach of warranty. Whether a stipulation in a contract of sale is a condition or a warranty depends in each case on the construction of the contract. A stipulation may be a condition though called a warranty in a contract. This is section 12 subsection 4. Example. So, first example, Kaushal asks a dealer to supply him a shirt which would not shrink after use and wash. The dealer supplies a shirt which shrinks after use and wash. Kaushal can reject the shirt or keep the shirt and claim damages. Here, the stipulation to supply a shirt which would not shrink after use and wash is a condition. Now, if Kaushal buys a particular shirt which is warranted by the dealer to be one which would not shrink after use and wash, and a t-shirt does shrink after use and wash, Kaushal's only remedy is to claim damages. Okay, so this is the difference between warranty and a condition. Example 2. A man buys a particular horse which is warranted quite to ride and drive. If the horse turns out to be vicious, the buyer's only remedy is to claim damages. But instead of buying a particular horse, a man asks a dealer to supply him with a quiet horse, and the dealer supplies him with a vicious one. The stipulation is a condition. Okay? And the buyer can return the horse and can also claim damages for breach of contract. So the case law is Hartley versus Hyman. The illustrations are a clear proof of the fact that an exactly similar term may be a condition in one contract and a warranty in another, depending upon the construction of the contract. So what is important is how you construct a contract is very, very important. Okay, so conditions and warranty distinguished, that is differences between condition and warranty. First, as to value. A condition is a stipulation which is essential to the main purpose of the contract, whereas a warranty is a stipulation which is collateral to the main purpose of the contract. Second, as to breach. The breach of condition gives the aggrieved party the right to repudiate the contract and also to claim damages. As to treatment, a breach of condition may be treated as a breach of warranty, but a breach of warranty cannot be treated as a breach of condition. When breach of condition is to be treated as breach of warranty. Section 13. Section 13 deals with cases where breach of condition is to be treated as a breach of warranty, as a consequence of which the buyer loses his right to rescind the contract and has to be content with a claim for damages only. What is the meaning of rescind? Rescind means cancellation. So these cases are as follows. First, voluntary waiver by buyer. Although on a breach of condition by the seller, the buyer has the right to treat the contract as repudiated and reject the goods, but he is not bound to do so. He may instead elect to waive the condition, that is, to treat the breach of condition as a breach of warranty and accept the goods and sue the seller for damages for breach of warranty. Illustration. Okay. A agrees to supply B 10 bags of first quality sugar at rupees 1625 per bag, but supplies only second quality sugar, the price of which is 1500 per bag. This is a breach of condition and the buyer can reject the goods. But if the buyer so elects, he may treat it as a breach of warranty, accept the second quality sugar and claim damages at rupees 125 per bag. How we got 125? It is 1625 minus 1500, which is rupees 125. Express condition or warranty. These may be of any kind that the parties may choose to agree upon. Example, it may be agreed that delivery of goods shall be made or taken on or before a certain date. Similarly, in a contract of sale of a car, express warranty as to its soundness may be incorporated. Now, implied conditions and warranties. They are deemed to be incorporated by law in every contract of sale of goods under the terms of the contract show a contrary intention. Now, implied conditions. Condition as to title, section 14. Sale by description, section 15. Condition as to quality or fitness for buyer's purpose, 16.1. Condition as to mercantilable quality, 16 subsection 2. Condition as to wholesomeness. Implied condition in the case of sale by sample, that is section 17. Implied condition in case of sale by sample as well as description, section 15. So everything is self-explanatory. Okay. Transfer of ownership. A contract of sale is performed in two interrelated stages. First is transfer of possession of goods and second is transfer of ownership of goods. Following reasons: A. Risk of losses. B. Only owner can sue if third party destroyed or damaged. C. Insolvency of buyer and seller. When the seller or buyer becomes insolvent, then liquidator can take over the property. D. Suit for price. Only seller can sue. Time when the property passes. First, number 1 is in case of unascertained goods, 2 in case of ascertained goods, and 3 in case of goods sent on approval basis. Sale by non-co-owners exception. Sale by a mercantile agent, sale under the implied authority, sale by one of the several joint owner, sale by seller in possession after sale, sale by buyer in possession after sale. So these are all not important concepts, and that's why I have given you the heading alone.